Hi everyone, I'm Marc Bates, a metabolic health coach, and today our topic is the forgotten cure, how fresh meat saved sailors from scurvy. Okay, history books celebrate limes and lemons as the miracle cure for scurvy. But what if sailors could have been saved by the very meat rations they already had access to? The conventional narrative about scurvy prevention is incomplete. While James Lind and his citrus experiments deserve their place in medical history, there's a parallel story that rarely makes it into textbooks. Fresh meat, particularly organ meats, contain enough vitamin C to prevent and cure scurvy easily. This fact, known by Arctic explorers and indigenous peoples for centuries, was systematically overlooked by the medical establishment. The truth changes everything we thought we knew about this deadly nutritional disease. The terror of scurvy. Scurvy killed more sailors than storms, shipwrecks, combat, and all other diseases combined. That's important. Remember, scurvy was so bad it killed more sailors than anything else that the navies had to deal with. During the age of sail, it's estimated that over 2 million sailors died from this condition. The symptoms progresses from fatigue and malaise to the truly horrific. Old wounds reopen, gums bleed, teeth fall out, skin bruises at the slightest touch. In advanced stages, scurvy victims suffer from hemorrhaging, jaundice, fever, and neuropathy. Death follows from internal bleeding or secondary infection. The psychological effects were equally devastating. Sailors reported extreme depression, hysteria, and a loss of a will to live. Some jumped overboard rather than endure the pain. For centuries, the cause remained a mystery. Various theories blamed bad air, sea dampness, or moral failings. Yes, moral failings is the cause of disease. There you go. Lind, the citrus solution. In 1747, Scottish naval surgeon James Lind conducted what many consider the first clinical trial in medical history. Aboard HMS Salisbury, remember that name, he divided 12 scurvy-stricken sailors into 6 pairs, giving each pair a different treatment. The pair receiving oranges and lemons recovered dramatically. This experiment eventually led to the British Navy issuing lemon juice to sailors in 1795 and later lime juice, leading to the nickname limeys. Scurvy rates plummeted. The British Navy gained a significant advantage in naval warfare and maritime exploration, and it's a neat, tidy story of scientific progress, but it's far from complete and definitely not 100% accurate. The overlooked evidence. So, long before Lind's experiment, there was substantial evidence that fresh meat could prevent and cure scurvy. Captain James Cook, celebrated for preventing scurvy on long voyages, ensured his crew had fresh meat whenever possible. Cook noted that scurvy did not appear as long as fresh food was consumed, even without citrus. Arctic explorers repeatedly observed that consuming fresh meat prevented scurvy. As noted by Arctic explorer Frederick Cook, the expedition proper ate fresh meat regularly at least once a day in the shape of polar bear. The people on the ship had, however, a prejudice against this food and insisted against all advice upon eating their preserved and salted meat. The result? Those eating preserved meat developed scurvy. Those eating fresh meat remained healthy. Perhaps the most compelling evidence came from Vilhjalmur Stefansson, an Arctic explorer who lived with the Inuit for 11 years. He observed that these indigenous people, subsisting almost entirely on meat and fat, never developed scurvy despite having no access to fruits or vegetables. Skeptical medical authorities dismissed his observations, so Stefansson proved it in 1928. He and a colleague participated in a supervised clinical study at Bellevue Hospital in New York, eating nothing but meat for a full year. The result? Neither developed any signs of vitamin C deficiency. In fact, they came out feeling healthier than when they went in. The evidence was clear. Fresh meat contained something that prevented scurvy. The science behind meat as a scurvy cure. Fresh meat, especially organ meats, contains vitamin C in quantities sufficient to prevent scurvy. Raw caribou liver supplies almost 24 milligrams of vitamin C per 100 grams. Okay? That's just a touch over 3 ounces. Seal brain, close to 15 milligrams. And whale skin, what's called muktuk, can provide an impressive 36 milligrams in a 100 gram piece. Weight for weight, it's as good as orange juice, if not even a little bit better. Humans only need about 10 milligrams of vitamin C daily to prevent scurvy, far less than commonly recommended amounts. And that doesn't take into effect the amount of vitamin C that gets reabsorbed or reused as your body uses it for other things. Okay? So your intake doesn't necessarily have to be 10 milligrams. The key distinction is between fresh and preserved meat. Drying, salting, smoking, and cooking at high temperature destroys vitamin C. Sailors ate preserved meats that had lost their vitamin C content during processing. For centuries, the USDA claimed meat contained no vitamin C, yet never properly tested for it. More recent research confirms that fresh beef contains approximately 1.6 to 2.5 micrograms per gram of vitamin C, with grass-fed meat containing higher amounts. On low-carbohydrate diets, vitamin C requirements may even be lower, or actually are extremely low. Glucose and vitamin C have nearly identical molecular structures and compete for the same metabolic pathways. When glucose intake is reduced, vitamin C absorption becomes much more efficient. Okay, real quick, if you would, it will help this channel a whole lot. Please like, subscribe, hit the bell to get notified. I greatly appreciate it. Thank you very much. So why did citrus win? Well, if fresh meat could prevent and cure scurvy, why did the British Navy and medical establishment embrace citrus instead? Several factors influenced this decision. First, practical considerations dominated naval logistics. Keeping animals alive on ships was difficult and space-intensive. Slaughtering created sanitation issues, and fresh meat spoiled quickly without refrigeration. Citrus juice could be preserved with alcohol and stored in bottles. It was a standardized supply chain friendly treatment. Second, theoretical understanding lagged far behind practical observations. Without knowledge of vitamins, only discovered in the early 20th century, medical authorities couldn't explain why fresh meat worked. Third, cultural biases played a role. European medical tradition emphasized plant remedies. Observations from indigenous peoples and explorers who lived among them were often dismissed as unscientific. Finally, economic interests favored citrus. The British Empire had extensive trade networks and colonial possessions ideal for citrus production. Promoting lemons and limes aligned with imperial commercial interests. The story of scurvy prevention became simplified to fit a narrative of scientific progress, with Lind as the hero and citrus as the solution. Lessons from history. The overlooked role of fresh meat in preventing scurvy offers several important lessons. First, it reminds us that scientific understanding often follows practical observation. Indigenous peoples know how to prevent scurvy through diet long before Western medicine identified vitamin C. Second, it demonstrates how practical considerations often trump scientific evidence. The British Navy chose citrus not because it was superior to fresh meat, but because it was more practical for their operational needs. Third, it reveals how cultural biases can blind us to valuable knowledge. The dismissal of meat-based remedies reflected European biases against indigenous knowledge and practices. Fourth, it shows how nutritional science has repeatedly underestimated the nutrient density of animal foods. The assumption that vitamin C comes only from plants persisted despite evidence to the contrary. Finally, it illustrates how simplified narratives can obscure complex historical truths. The story of scurvy and its cure is richer and far more nuanced than most textbooks would suggest. Modern implications. The historical oversight has modern relevance, particularly for underestimating nutrition. The case of scurvy and fresh meat challenges the common assumption that animal products are nutritionally inferior to plant foods. It suggests our understanding of nutrient requirements and sources remains incomplete. For those following ketogenic or carnivore diets, the historical evidence provides reassurance. People can obtain sufficient vitamin C from fresh animal products, especially when consuming organ meats. It also raises questions about other potential nutritional misconceptions. What other nutrients might exist in animal foods that were overlooked or underestimated? The history of scurvy treatment reminds us to maintain healthy skepticism toward nutritional orthodoxy. What seems obvious today may be revised tomorrow as our understanding evolves. Beyond the line. The story of scurvy is much more than a tale of limes and lemons. It's about how knowledge is created, validated, and sometimes forgotten. Fresh meat offered a viable solution to one of history's deadliest nutritional diseases. That this fact has been largely forgotten speaks to the power of simplified narratives and institutional inertia. As we continue to explore optimal human nutrition, we would do well to remember this historical blind spot. The cure for scurvy wasn't just in the citrus groves of the Mediterranean, it was also in the fresh meat that humans have been consuming for millennia. The most valuable insights often come from looking beyond conventional wisdom to the evidence hidden in plain sight. Sometimes the answer isn't in exotic new discoveries, but in ancient knowledge waiting to be rediscovered. And finally, let's go back to the simplified story of James Lind. Yes, he did give citrus to 2 of the sailors in his test. He also gave fresh meat to 2 of them, and they also survived and got well from the scurvy that they were under. What James Lind did is he took fresh meat and he put it through a meat grinder so that it was easy to chew. Because remember, these guys had their teeth were rotting in many cases or falling out. And so he would grind the meat up, and he included all the meat part that was there, including the lean meat, the fat, and what's called offal, which is the liver and kidneys and brains and stuff, right? Whatever was available. It all got ground up, and this was fed to the sailors, and they survived scurvy as well. This ground meat became known as Salisbury steak. Remember, I told you, remember the name of the ship Lind was on? And Salisbury steak became a food that was given as a curative. It wasn't just a slab of hamburger with heavy gravy thrown over it. It was given to help people get better because it was easier to eat, and it was easy for them to take this in. So it wasn't always lemons. It was also Salisbury steak. All right. Thank you for watching. Remember, please comment. Please share this. And if you have any questions, put it in the comments. I'll get back to you as quickly as I can. Also, if you have any ideas that you'd like to have coming up, any health questions you'd like me to try to address, leave them in the comments, and I'll get to it as soon as I can. Thank you so much.